This time around on Author's Corner, I am very pleased to introduce you to Margie Cox. Her book is From Broken and Bleeding to Healed and Whole. That says it all. And boy, what an interesting life she's led. She talks about looking at the ruins, what's been destroyed, and applying the tools to rebuild that take time and tears. It says it right on the description of the book, but the end result is worth it. I've gone through it. I absolutely agree with her 100%. She's a woman who's been married for over 60 years. She's got children, grandchildren. She certainly knows how to have fun and excitement, but she has been through a lot of things, my friends, like many of you too. And I think this is the beauty of her book, the fact that she's vulnerable and helps so many of you. And the fact is, if you go through and pay attention to Margie's story, you learn from it. And I think it can help you heal as well. Margie, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
What compelled you to write the book?
Probably, if I were to be honest, a little bit of age. But for several years, I had been commenting that if I ever wrote a book, this would be the title. From the before Christ part would be Broken and Bleeding, and then to Healed and Whole. But when in September of 21, I reached a milestone. That was my 80th birthday. And there was a group of people at my house. And as I talked to them, I realized it was a milestone because there was a time in my life, some 50 years prior, that it didn't look like I was going to live to be 30. I had fallen into a pit of depression based on something that had happened. And I was suicidal. So it took a while and some prayers and some things to pull me out of that. And some of that's in chapter 4 of the book. But then to realize, okay, if I was there, maybe somebody else is there, and maybe I have a word that could be helpful. As I thought about going ahead to write, it involved my sister also, so she was aware that I was going to start writing. And this was her comment to me. One day you will tell the story of what you've overcome, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And that gave me the courage to write.
Well, you certainly do have a lot of courage. You talk very openly about the sexual abuse that you suffered from your father and also your sister too. Is that what brought you to the brink? Because I can imagine a lot of people out there carry that, and it's a really heavy, heavy burden. And clearing that and being able to deal with that is so key, isn't it?
Well, and once I found out that he had abused my sister, who was 7 years younger, I took all the responsibility, felt all the guilt, because why had I not done something to stop him? Well, I was a child, but that's not how you always think. And so I felt totally responsible and guilty, and I just hit the skids.
Wow, I tipped the skids. So I've said this in the top. You tipped the skids, but yet now you've been married 60 years. Your husband is with you. He's in this. At one point, you asked your husband to buy a cemetery plot, like you were saying, when you were suicidal. And now you get through this. You come through this road. What do you talk about in the book that you think will be so helpful to other people listening to our conversation?
As I of course, explain and talk about not only my dad, but my mother had done something that was extremely hurtful and hateful to my sister and me. And I had to go through the forgiveness process again. But what I realized when I ultimately dealt with my mother, she knew what had happened to my sister and me, and she chose not to do anything about it. The premise of my book is about choices, choosing, and she chose to turn a blind eye. So when she told the lawyer that she wasn't being fair to my sister and me, but she didn't care, that just nailed the, she didn't care when we were growing up and we were being abused and hurt. She didn't care. I had a really hard time forgiving her for that. You know, even animal mothers will fight to the death to protect their young. Mom didn't do that for us.
Wow. And here you are in your book again, from broken and bleeding to healed and whole. We're speaking with Margie Cox. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You talk a lot about forgiveness. You and I talked about that off the air, and you talked about there's freedom of forgiveness. Why is it so important to forgive ourselves?
Because there are prisons that are far worse than bars on a jail. The freedom of forgiveness to give you the peace and the joy and what you can have. And part of what I do at the back of the book is give you the steps to go through to be able to do it. There's 4 or 5 very concrete things that you can do to take it a step at a time and achieve the freedom.
And once you do that, once you did that, did your life change?
Yes. Yes, it did. It took a while, especially with my dad, because that was quite a few years prior. It took a while for me to gain the peace and the purpose of being able to move into married life, take care of my boys, be a mother, be what I should have been able to be when I was so broken and couldn't.
And it's so interesting because you're such a good-hearted woman. I mean, you and I also talked about this. You're teaching women in jail, and this is what you're teaching them, right?
Yes, it's exactly what I'm teaching them. And I give them worksheets. I'm big on worksheets, but I give them paperwork, and I tell them it works. Do it. It'll be worth it.
And when people read your book, what do you hope, Margie, the takeaway is for them?
That there is nothing that you will go through that can't have purpose if you can forgive it and let God use it. I guess that sounds a little bit simplistic, but that's really it.
Yeah. And you found that purpose. You have that life. I mean, look, for goodness sake, are you still riding around in that red Mustang with the stick shift?
Yes, with the top down.
Wow. 80, and you're much younger than that.
I feel like I am too. But I also decided on my 80th birthday, if I'm going to write this, I probably better get with it because, time's running out.
Such strong messages, such a wonderful book, From Broken and Bleeding to Healed and Whole. If you pick it up, Margie gives you the solutions. You'll have that work that you can do. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting and that you can heal. So Margie, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
What I love about this book, and she talks about it right in the first chapter, she talks about early in her marriage having this fight with her husband, and what does she do, and where is she going to go? And she realizes, well, I could get packed up, but what's going to happen next? And she says in her book, I had no skill or tools to help me work through my feelings for a positive solution. So I just sucked it up. I had made my bed and I'd lie in it. I made the choice to unpack my physical bag. Unfortunately, the emotional baggage was beginning to get a little heavy. Forgiveness was a completely foreign and unknown concept to me at the time. That's what's key in this book. She really teaches you how to forgive, how to love yourself, because if you don't forgive, it of course hurts you and not the person. On that note, we wrap up this show. Thanks, Margie, for that great interview, and all of you for listening to it and our offerings. Be safe, be sane, and for goodness sake, be happy, people.
Visit www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com. Call us at 877-600-5469. Subscribe now.